Yeah, but once again, like this game looks looks like a desktop wallpaper on almost every angle and every scene. It's just a beautiful game to look at, but the actual content that is in the game is, you know, it's a bit uninteresting and becomes quite monotonous after a while. And it's not something that increasing, like, say, you know, difficulty of the game is gonna fix. Like, I could increase the difficulty, and what would that make me do in the first place? Like, if I put this back on the highest difficulty right now, what would that, like, incentivize me to do? Well, if I try to play my normal playstyle, it would I would get hit the same amount at first. I would take more damage from the enemies. Okay, so what if I take more damage from the enemies and I get hit the same amount? What does that force me to do? It either forces me to A, play slower, or it forces me to change my playstyle entirely. And why do I have this playstyle? Because I feel like this is the most enjoyable and entertaining way to play this game. So what I'm basically saying is that it does not serve me to my interest if I increase the difficulty of this game. That is not gonna make it more enjoyable at this point. It's literally just what the gameplay itself is what is the issue, you know? What were these guys weak again?
You're not gonna be the one to stop me.
See what I mean? Like, this would be a fun thing to do in this game, but like, when do you ever get a window to like use the enemy's weapon against them, right? Like, that's another thing, right? What if the enemy has high shock resistance and you can't like shock them to stun them? Like, how do we ever get a window to use those, you know? See that scene, for example. If I say that the game is becoming more stale, and then, you know, one of your thoughts is like, well, if it's getting more stale, then, I don't know, maybe increase difficulty. Well, what in that scene, in this fight, what would change in this fight if I increase the difficulty? I damn near got fucking... I lost like 70% of my HP, I think, at one time, or maybe 60%. And I'm pretty fucking over-leveled. Like, I'm level, like, what now? I'm level 54 right now. And these enemies were like level 27 or something. And they did that high amount of damage to me with one hit. Imagine I had the highest difficulty on, they would just slap me one shot, and then I would just have to go like back to like fucking here. And all of the progress I did to this point will be erased. I have to run this entire path again, kill all of the enemies I had on this path again. If there were any unique items, I lose them. Like, point is that with how this game's like combat works and reset mechanics, if you increase the difficulty alone and hope that that kind of like changes your playstyle to, you know, respect the game a bit more, or like, you know, maybe make it a bit more interesting or intimidating, exciting or whatever, like that alone will not fix this. It's the same exact thing as I had with Stellar Blades. Like, yeah, I enjoyed the last 2 challenge runs I did in Stellar Blade. I really did enjoy those. I really do mean it too. The ones where I did the, you know, level 1 blood edge attack runs on my 4th and 5th playthrough before I, you know, came to this game. I enjoyed those a lot. But at the same time, I said to myself before playing any of the 2 playthroughs there, that if I just intentionally make the game harder for myself by making myself do either less damage or take more damage, it's not gonna fix fundamentally what makes the game, like, not as fun for me. And the main problem is that the enemy variety combined with the enemy attack patterns and the enemy attack philosophy is way too loose in that game. It's way too forgiving. It gives way too big opportunities for the player to, you know, be able to freely heal and not get punished by the enemies, you know? It doesn't feel like it's, It doesn't feel like you have to respect the game a lot of the time. It more so feels that the game is respecting you a lot of the time. It's the exact opposite, you know? And that is something that just, you know, challenge running is not gonna fix it. It definitely was more fun for me. Okay, can you fucking stop? See this enemy attack design? This game has probably the worst enemy attack design I have ever witnessed in a game. It really honestly does, and I'm not gonna sugarcoat it whatsoever. It's just horrible. It's horrendous. I'm really curious if they are ever gonna have like a, I don't know, more like intimate, like 1 versus 1 boss fight kind of like encounter at some point, and how the fuck they are ever gonna execute something like that with this like development team's like incompetence when it comes to designing enemy attack patterns. Like, it is horrendously shit in this game. But I feel like I've said this before also, how like I feel like one of the big reasons as to why they designed the way it is because they don't want the player to engage too much in like hand-to-hand combat in this game. They want the player to sneak around and execute enemies with sneak attacks and like play stealth, and you know, that's kind of like the intended thing. You are a hunter in this game. They want you to like embody that kind of archetype, and that's the reason as to why the gameplay is the way it is. And I refuse to believe that it's straight up just incompetence on a AAA game that looks and runs this beautifully for them to have that massive flaw on a game like this.
Fascinating.
On a game of this scale, you know? I refuse to believe that it's just the incompetence of the development team. So I'm just gonna blame it on literally how they designed fundamentally and encourage the player to have this certain playstyle. So I do understand as to why it is the way it is. But dude, have the developers themselves seen how big the open world is in this game? Yet, if the enemies are very far and in between and the encounters are shorter, I then would understand as to, you know, where the like novelty of like, you know, sneaking around and, you know, backstabbing the enemies comes from. When the encounters are more far between and you have more times when you're just kind of like searching stuff. Like, don't get me wrong, like, there is a lot of running around in this game and not fighting enemies. There is a whole lot of it. But I feel like the encounters drag on for an absolute eternity at times, if you don't fight the enemies head on. If you're just, like, determined to sneak around only. Now, there is ways to go around this, obviously, like, you know, with my stealth armor, for example. Like, I could easily, with this armor set, with how broken it is, I could easily just sneak around most enemies and just sneak attack, execute most of them, most of the weaker ones, and then, you know, start an encounter with some of the stronger ones by like sneak attacking them first, and then like, you know, killing them with some, you know, one-shot weapon like this, for example, the blast wire. Like, I could have that playstyle, but that playstyle is not interesting to me. There's nothing exciting in that playstyle for me. So like, yeah, maybe, you know, for somebody who is a very different person who plays these games, this kind of
Scrabbling a bit.
gameplay feels different. But even in Ghost of Tsushima, that also encourages the very sneaky type gameplay, there is a very strong, and this is a very well-known thing, but there is a very strong emphasis in Ghost of Tsushima, in something like Ghost of Tsushima, where the fundamental like plot device in the game is that you as the main character, as Jin Sakai, are supposed to turn into this like rogue character, this like vigilante throughout the story that has been influenced by, you know, some thief like Yuna to become like, you know, the person that he himself swore as a samurai to like defeat or eradicate from their island, you know? It's a plot device and you're supposed to play into that. But even in that game, there is a very strong emphasis on sword fighting. And that is like one of the main amazingly executed things of that game, is the sword fighting. So you can literally choose to just not use the sneak mechanics in that game damn near at all and just fight every enemy head on if you want. The game gives you that option. And it executes it perfectly as well. And this game also gives you very often, I've noticed on both the main missions as well as the side missions, it always has given me pretty much an option to either sneak around or to fight enemies head on. It always has given me that option. But where the problem lies in is the combat itself. Because the combat in this game does not encourage you to fight enemies because of the aforementioned reasons I said before about the enemy attack patterns and the, you know, character rigging and where the hitboxes are when enemy shows an attack, which is very early usually, you know, to forcefully like hit the player and make it so that damn near like reacting to what the enemy attack is does not matter, only how fast you dodge it matters usually. And that is fundamentally something that most other games that have an emphasis on combat do not have in them. Most of these games emphasize the timing and knowing what the enemy attack is or what it looks like at a bare minimum before you go for a dodge, so that you don't dodge too early or too late accidentally and get punished by it. It's part of the very big like, you know, skill gap of these games. One of the like things that people who play these like types of action games, or any action game for that matter, like in their games, you know? But then there are some exceptions like Nier Automata for one, or yeah, Nier Automata, I guess, for one, where like, you know, it doesn't matter like that much like what the enemy attack is, as long as you see that there's an enemy attack coming and then you just dodge it with a perfect dodge. That is quite loose in that game. So it doesn't matter as much in that game. But when you do get hit in that game by, you know, missing a perfect dodge, for example, it's mostly just down to, you know, you being too lazy to not press the button or too greedy because you wanted to do more damage or something, you know? It's not down to, you know, enemy attack being too difficult for you to dodge at the perfect time. So it's kind of like in this game, where like I'm usually too greedy to aim at sweet spots on enemies when I'm focusing on the enemies to actually hit them with the bow, for example, rather than focusing on dodging enemy attacks. Because if I focus only on dodging an enemy attack when it comes, well, you can see what the problem with that one is. Whenever there's like 10 to like 5 enemies on top of me at the same time, how am I supposed to do anything besides dodge their attacks? I either run away, or permanently dodge their attacks, or I run away and try to find a spot where I can somehow be more safer and strategize versus the enemies. But this third one, it doesn't work in this game. Guess why it doesn't work? Because damn near every enemy in this game is faster than Aloy at running speed. Actually, yeah, pretty much every single enemy is faster than Aloy. Even the bandits that we fight are faster at running speed than Aloy is. So what that fundamentally does is, when you get that engagement into a fight, the game is basically telling you that either you fight now or you don't, because you can't escape the enemies, so you only have pretty much one option when the enemies are alerted, you know?
Corrupted watchers, acting as guards. The Eclipse and corrupted machines, cooperating. One happy family.